husband stared silently at the DNA test results. I couldn't take my eyes off the line that turned our lives upside down. Paternity probability, 0%. That evening, Michael and I were having dinner. I made potatoes with chicken. He ate quietly, abruptly as always, and then, between bites, almost casually, he said, "I've had my doubts for a long time, Sarah. I think it's time to do a paternity test." At first, I thought he was joking. We've been raising Jason together for 15 years, through sleepless nights when he had colic, his first steps, broken bones, school projects. We were a team for 15 years, or so I thought. "Are you crazy?" I laughed, but he didn't smile. His jaw clenched, the fork clanged loudly on the plate, and he didn't look up. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. "Exactly what I said. There were reasons to doubt. It's time to find out everything." I didn't know what shocked me more, the fact that he doubted or the cold indifference with which he said it, as if we were discussing a tax return or picking out a new vacuum cleaner. Michael and I met when I was 28. I was done playing with passion and was looking for stability. He was reliable, though not a romantic, the type who pays bills on time and helps with cleaning every Sunday. A year after the wedding, Jason was born. Everything went smoothly, and he was in the delivery room, even cried when he first held him. I remember it well. He didn't even cry at his mother's funeral. I didn't shout, didn't ask questions. "How could you?" I just lay beside him that night, staring at the fan by the bed, counting the blade's rotations, listening to his steady breathing, as if he hadn't just derailed our entire life. 2 days later, we were already sitting in a private lab. The nurse was overly friendly. I even wondered how she perceived us. A pair of anxious parents, a woman suspected of infidelity, or a man tired of trusting. When Jason asked why he needed to come to the doctor with us, Michael said, "Just routine tests." I stayed silent. I didn't tell Emily, my sister who calls every evening, nor Kate, my friend who always has an opinion about men, nor Jason's pediatrician, who has known him since he was 2. I simply waited. They promised results in 7 days, but it took 9. Each minute weighed on me like a bag of cement on my shoulders. Michael barely spoke, left for work early, came home late, ate quietly, no greeting, no goodnight. The air between us felt like a hospital room, sterile and foreign. On the 5th day, I couldn't stand it and asked, "What made you doubt?" He didn't look up from Sports Illustrated. "A few things. It doesn't matter now. We'll find out soon." It wasn't the answer that alarmed me, but how he gave it. Something distant, cold, as if he'd already decided everything. I started replaying everything in my mind that could have led him to such thoughts. Someone said something, someone compared, maybe a friend pointed out that Jason didn't look like him. But he does. The same chin dimple, curly hair, even the expression when angry, just like Michael. When I finally told Emily, she immediately recalled Michael's ex and that story with the music teacher. He'd already been paranoid, trusted no one, not even himself. "Some wounds never heal," she said. "They just crust over, and even a slight nudge can reopen them." Emily offered to visit, but I refused. I didn't want anyone entering our home while it was filled with this tension. It felt like even the walls shook from everything unsaid. Jason changed too, grew quieter, more thoughtful. At dinner, he picked at his food as if waiting for the peas to tell him what was wrong. "Is Dad mad at you?" he asked softly, almost in a whisper one evening. "No, sweetheart," I lied. "He's just tired." I began watching Michael more closely, how he'd go to the garage to check the car but kept looking at his phone, how he'd snap his laptop shut as soon as I entered the room. He used to share everything, even his boring office spreadsheets, articles about home repairs we'd never undertake. Once, I couldn't help myself and tried to open his laptop. It was now password protected. It never used to be. The morning we expected the results, I couldn't even drink my coffee. It sat on the table, growing cold, while I bit my lips and clenched my fingers. Jason was at school, thankfully. We drove to the lab in silence. Michael gripped the steering wheel firmly, confidently, while I kept my hands in my lap, my nails digging into my palms. At reception, the woman smiled brightly. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, please come in." The doctor sat at the table with a face like he was about to tell us the world ran out of oxygen. He didn't rush, first asking, "Are you prepared for what you might hear?" I looked at Michael. He didn't even flinch. "Yes," he said. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tied in knots. The doctor opened the folder with the results, leaf by leaf, as if counting heartbeats. "According to the analysis," he paused, placing his finger on a line, "the probability of paternity is 0%. My ears rang. My hands went cold. For a moment, it felt like my heart had simply disappeared. Not beating, just emptiness. Michael sat back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. I knew it. But the doctor still looked at me, not at him, and in his eyes was something strange. Not judgment, not sympathy, but concern. A professional medical concern. "There's something else," he said cautiously. "And it's serious." Michael straightened up instantly. "What do you mean?" "We conducted a standard DNA match test not only between father and son, but also between mother and son." My head spun. "What?" I whispered. He looked me straight in the eye and uttered a phrase that stayed with me forever. "Sarah, according to the results, Jason is not biologically related to either you or your husband." Everything went black. I looked at the doctor, but he seemed to say more, though I couldn't understand. Just couldn't absorb it. It had to be a mistake, a sick joke. Michael jumped up. The chair screeched across the floor. "Is this some kind of joke?" "It's no joke," said the doctor calmly. "We triple-checked. It's no clerical error. Biologically, the boy you raised is not your son." The world around seemed to freeze. No sound, color, or motion. Everything vanished as if a flash grenade had gone off. I froze. Wanted to scream, but screaming felt as impossible as breathing underwater. On the way home, we didn't utter a word. Only the turn signal ticked like a countdown to an explosion. When we walked into the apartment, Michael closed the door behind him and exploded. "I knew! I felt something was off! But this is beyond!" He paced the room, gesticulating wildly, like he couldn't believe the words he spoke out loud. I tried to say something, wanted him to sit down, breathe, look at me, but he didn't even hear, as if I was invisible. "You had one job, Sarah," he hissed through gritted teeth. "One!" And slammed the door to the guest room. Seems that's his new home now. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I took a box from the closet, the one with Jason's hospital tags, a copy of his birth certificate, photos. Me, exhausted, with a swollen face but happy, holding tiny Jason in my arms. I know this boy is mine. By his eyes, his scent, the way he scratches his nose when he lies. But now, I don't know how to prove it. In the morning, When Jason had gone to school, I sat at the kitchen table, cold coffee before me, and took a folder with the St. Mary's Hospital logo. On the back was the registration desk number. I dialed it. My voice trembled, but I spoke clearly. I'd practiced all night. "Hello, I need to speak with someone about a possible baby switch that happened at your hospital 15 years ago." The operator paused. "I will connect you to the archives now." Archives transferred me to administration, which then put me on hold for 11 minutes and 38 seconds. I counted. Finally, a tired man's voice came through. "A switched baby 15 years ago? This is early 2009? Our system keeps records for the last 10 years only. You'll have to file an official request, perhaps through court." Through court? I couldn't believe my ears. "You can't just check who else delivered there?" "Sorry." He sighed heavily. "Even if I wanted to help, legal restrictions bind us. Health privacy laws. There's nothing I can disclose." Medical confidentiality? How ironic. My life was falling apart, and they offered paperwork as if misplaced books in a library. I hung up, hands shaking. Then I stood up, donned a coat, grabbed my keys. If they refuse to talk over the phone, I'm going there myself, to that damn St. Mary's Hospital. The road to the maternity ward felt unfamiliar, though I once knew it by heart. I hadn't been there for 15 years. Everything had changed since. The sign, the building, even the entrance is now elsewhere. Only the parking lot remained the same. The very spot where Michael scrambled around for a doctor while I clutched my belly, praying everything would go well. I parked almost at that same spot. Inside, it smelled of antiseptic and slightly stale coffee from the vending machine. Approaching the desk, I said, "I need to speak with someone from either the archives or administration. It's urgent. This concerns a possible baby switch in 2009. The girl at the reception looked at me as if deciding whether to empathize or hit an alarm. She awkwardly smiled. "Without a court order or a request from an investigation, we can't—" I interrupted her. "I'm not asking for addresses or names, just to see who was delivering around then. My child may not be mine. I'm begging you." She hesitated, looked around, and whispered, "Please wait here." It was about 10 minutes before I began thinking she might have slipped away when a woman in her 60s approached me. Her name tag read, "Dr. Margaret Wilson, Patient Relations Manager." "I remember you," she said softly, before I could even open my mouth. "You had an emergency C-section. There were complications. We almost lost you." I blinked. "You remember me?" "I've been here for over 40 years. Some stories don't fade away." "Let's go." She motioned toward a hallway. "This isn't the place for such a conversation." We entered her office, small, packed with files, lined with photos of medical school graduates on the walls. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. The test, the results, how my life was unraveling. She listened without interruption, her frown deepening. "That night," she finally spoke, "we had 3 emergency cases. You, a woman with twins, and another premature delivery. All were C-sections." My heart raced. "And what about them? Those babies?" She shook her head. "The twins didn't survive. The premature baby died 2 days later." I felt the room blur before me. "But how then—" "Wait." She got up, went to a shelf. "I have old records, not official ones. I've always kept my log." She pulled out a worn journal, began flipping pages. "Here. March 15th, 2009. Emergency ward. 3 C-sections." "Strange." "Strange how?" I leaned forward. She ran a finger along the lines. There's a note about a call from another hospital that night. Cross Memorial. They also had an emergency C-section. They requested assistance because their neonatal ventilator was broken. We sent them a vehicle. She fell silent, staring out the window as if trying to recall something. Dr. Wilson? I called softly. She turned to me, and in her eyes, I saw alarm. Cross Memorial was shut down a year later. There was an investigation, something related to documentation, and she didn't finish. What? I could barely breathe. She shook her head. I don't know the details, but after that incident, half the staff was laid off. There were rumors of document forgery, but officially, nothing was confirmed. She paused and added, Cross Memorial is about 2 hours from here, in Riverside. I noted down the address with a trembling hand. As I was leaving, she called out, Be careful. Some secrets are better left undisturbed. I turned. What about the truth? She smiled sadly. Sometimes the truth hurts more than a lie. On the way home, I cried for the first time in days, not from grief or fear, but helplessness. Somewhere out there, perhaps, my real child was growing up. And somewhere, there's a woman who may not even know she is raising my son. At home, Jason was doing homework. Seeing me, he smiled, the very same smile I once thought was a copy of mine. Mom, will you help with history? I looked at him, unable to move. How do you tell a child their life is a mistake? That somewhere there's another mom, another family? In the evening when he was asleep, I sat at the computer. Cross Memorial Hospital Riverside Closure 2010. I typed in the search. The articles were brief. Because of financial irregularities, documentation lost. Staff refuses to comment. I opened a map. Riverside. 2 hours drive. Tomorrow's Saturday. Jason's going to a friend's birthday. Michael. He's not speaking to me anyway. I'll take the car and drive there. Someone must remember what happened that night. Riverside turned out to be a small town where everyone seems to know one another. The old building of Cross Memorial had been turned into an office center, but the locals still remembered the hospital. In a local cafe, I struck up a conversation with a waitress. She had worked here for 20 years. Oh, that story. She lowered her voice. People still whisper about it here. Nurse Patricia Coleman, she worked in maternity then. After the hospital closed, she vanished. Rumor has it, she went to Canada. She scribbled an address on a napkin. Her sister still lives here. Maybe she knows something. The house of Nurse Coleman's sister was on the outskirts. Small, well-kept, with swings in the yard. I knocked. A woman in her 50s, eerily similar to me, came to the door, dark hair, brown eyes. Can I help you? I'm looking for Patricia Coleman. It concerns Cross Memorial. The woman turned pale. Pat passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. She tried to close the door, but I managed to wedge my foot in. Please, it's about my child. That night in March 2009, she froze, then slowly opened the door wider. Come in. In the living room, photos adorned the walls. One caught my attention. A teenage boy looked strikingly like Jason. Is that your son? I asked. The woman nodded. Nephew. Pat's son. I felt the ground shift beneath me. How old is he? 15, she replied, looking at me intently. Born in March 2009. Where is he now? I asked, my voice trembling. In school. I pick him up after classes. She paused. Is that why you're here? Because of what happened that night? I took out my phone and showed her a picture of Jason. She looked at it for a long time, then sat down heavily in a chair. Oh my God, they look like twins. What happened? I could barely speak. Tell me. Pat could never have children, she began quietly. 3 miscarriages. It broke her. She worked in the maternity ward, seeing others' happiness every day. And then... She stopped, staring out the window. And then? That night, a woman was brought in. An emergency C-section. She died during childbirth. Her husband died in an accident on the way to the hospital. The baby was left orphaned. She looked me in the eye. Pat said it was a sign. A chance to be a mother. But my child... I clenched my fists. Your child was supposed to be sent to St. Mary's for special equipment. Pat switched the documents. The orphan was sent to St. Mary's as your son. And yours... She nodded at a photo on the wall. His name is Michael, she said. Michael Coleman. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. Michael, like his father, as if part of me always knew. He's a happy boy, she added quietly. Pat loved him more than life, but in her last months before she died, she was restless. She kept talking about guilt, about seeking forgiveness. And the boy who went to St. Mary's? I asked. I don't know. Pat never spoke of it. She was afraid the truth would come out. She stood, went to a dresser, and took out an envelope. She wrote this before she died, told me to give it if someone came asking. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and an old photo, a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. On the back was the date, March 15th, 2009. To whomever reads this, the letter began, I have committed the unforgivable. Selfishness clouded my judgment. I stole someone else's happiness to build my own. Now, as death nears, I cannot take this secret with me. The phone rang. It was Jason's school. Mrs. Parker, your son. He's had a seizure. An ambulance is on the way. I froze. What kind of seizure? It looks like epilepsy. You didn't mention it in his medical history. I didn't listen further. Does anyone in your family have epilepsy? I asked Patricia's sister. She paled. The parents of that woman, who died in childbirth. It was in her medical records. So, Jason is the orphan, and my biological son is here, 2 hours away, bearing a different surname. I looked at the photo of Michael on the wall. My boy. 15 years I didn't know where you were. What will you do now? The woman asked quietly. I clutched Patricia's letter in my hand. The truth must come out. For all of us. Rain began to fall outside. I watched the drops slide down the window and thought about how one decision made 15 years ago had changed so many lives. Michael will be back soon, Patricia's sister said. Do you want to meet him? I shook my head. Not now. First, I need to talk to Jason and find his real family. I'll help, she said, pulling out an old box of documents. This is all that's left from that night. Pat kept it for years. We started sorting through the papers, the death certificates of Sarah and John Wright, their medical records, photographs. A call from the hospital interrupted our search. Mrs. Parker, Jason is fine. The seizure was mild, but we need the full medical history of his biological parents. I looked at the photo of Sarah Wright, a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. I have that information, I replied. I'll bring all the documents. As I was leaving, Patricia's sister handed me a photo of Michael. He needs to know the truth, but be careful. Sometimes the truth can destroy more than a lie. On the way to the hospital, I thought about how to tell Jason everything, how to explain to Michael, how we would live from now on. But most importantly, I finally knew the truth, and this was only the beginning. The first meeting took place in the park. Michael came with his Aunt Jason, with me. They stood looking at each other for a long time, not saying a word. Two boys, both similar and different. I've always wanted a brother, Jason suddenly said. Michael smiled. Me too. They talked for hours about school, friends, hobbies. Turns out, both love basketball and science fiction. Imagine, Michael laughed. We could have grown up together, but fate had another blow prepared. That evening, I returned home earlier than usual, forgot some documents. Voices came from the bedroom. I opened the door and froze. Michael, my husband, was embracing a young woman, his secretary, Emma. How long? Was all I could manage to ask. 2 years, he replied without looking at me. I was going to tell you, after everything that happened with the test. Emma silently packed her things. On her finger gleamed a ring, identical to the one he gave me 15 years ago. They both left. A week later, I received divorce papers from Michael's lawyer. Michael didn't even bother to tell me personally. The divorce was quick. Michael went to Emma, leaving the house to me. Jason chose to stay with me, but often visited Michael, his presumed father, and the real Michael, my biological son, became a regular guest in our home. A year passed. We gathered for Thanksgiving, me, both boys, Patricia's sister. Now, on the wall, photos of Sarah and John Wright hung next to ours. 2 trees intertwined by fate. You know, Jason said, helping set the table, sometimes I think maybe it was meant to be, for all of us to find each other. Michael hugged his brother. The main thing is, we're together now. I looked at them and realized, sometimes from lies, truth can grow, and from pain, love. We all lost something but gained something greater, a real family. In the evening, when the boys fell asleep in the next room, I took out Patricia's old letter. I stole someone else's happiness, she wrote. But maybe she just changed its shape? After all, happiness is not a map with a single correct route. It's a path we walk together, supporting each other. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.